You can't just drive through someone's property and expect no consequences. I muttered under my breath as I stepped onto the familiar gravel of my ranch. The early morning sun glinting off the metal gate that marked the edge of 40 acres I'd inherited from my grandfather. Each post a reminder of decades of family sweat and care. The smell of fresh-cut hay mixed with dust from the driveway, hitting me like a punch of memory and responsibility as I noticed tire tracks weaving dangerously. Close to the fence line, the echo of engines bouncing off the rolling hills, carrying with them the smug confidence of Linda Hawthorne's so-called HOA patrol, her white SUVs moving like they owned every inch, dust clouds rising behind them, startling the cattle, and I felt a sharp, electric tension crawl up my spine, knowing that any misstep could escalate, though I was determined not to give them that satisfaction. The gravel crunching beneath my boots, syncing with my heartbeat, every step. Calculated, the faint scent of gasoline mingling with the earthy aroma of the pasture, the wind rustling through the oak trees at the perimeter carrying a faint whistle that sounded like a warning, and I paused at the old oak where I carved my initials as a kid, hand tracing the grooves worn smooth over years, grounding me in the history of this land, the promise that I would protect it at all costs. A whisper of sunlight catching the dew on the grass like tiny prisms, the distant bark of a dog, warning of intruders, reminding me that even in stillness, the ranch demanded vigilance. I could see the way Linda's SUVs threaded along the narrow access road, confident, almost theatrical in their display, and my chest tightened as I scanned the surrounding area for every possible route they could exploit, the sweat on my forehead pricking my eyes, mixing with the sharp tang of morning air, and I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down, yet sharpening every sense, the smell of leather from my boots, the faint metallic hint from my keys as I gripped them tighter, the crunch of gravel underfoot signaling each deliberate step, every detail imprinting in my mind like a blueprint of defense, the sun climbing higher, painting the hills in gold, shadows stretching long across my property, and I realized that this wasn't just about land. It was about respect, boundaries, and the silent assertion of rights earned through years of care and labor, the distant sound of engines growing louder as the SUVs drew nearer, the hum of anticipation mixing with the smell of dust and pine, and I felt a surge of determination, every muscle tensing, every nerve alert, ready to act with precision, knowing that the moment had come where patience and ingenuity would meet, the horizon catching fire with early sunlight as I prepared to set the first move in a plan that would defend my ranch without a word, every detail from fence posts to gravel markers memorized, the air crackling with potential energy, and I whispered to myself, "Not today, Linda, not today." The ranch stretched out before me in golden morning light, each hill and hollow etched into memory from years of work and care, the smell of earth and hay thick in the air, and I walked along the fence line, hands brushing the rough wood, feeling every splinter, every nail that held it together as a testament to decades of family dedication. The wind carrying the soft rustle of leaves and distant bird calls, grounding me in the rhythm of this land. I passed the old water trough, the metal cool, under my touch, remembering summers when my grandfather taught me to measure water levels and check the flow, lessons that now felt like a silent preparation for the challenges ahead, every sound amplified. The creak of a gate swinging in the breeze, the distant hum of a tractor at a neighboring farm, the crunch of gravel beneath my boots echoing through the quiet acres. I paused at the corner where a cluster of oak trees marked the boundary between pastures, noticing the subtle depressions in the soil, tire tracks from the morning SUVs that had pushed too close, and my stomach tightened as I cataloged every intrusion, every detail, aware that precision and observation would be my advantage. The sun climbing higher, painting shadows that shifted with the contours of the land, highlighting every ridge, every low point. The air carrying the faint scent of diesel from the distant highway, yet unable to mask the rich aroma of earth and grass, grounding me in the reality of ownership and responsibility. I traced the edge of the driveway, noting the spacing of the posts, the alignment of gates, visualizing how each barrier could reinforce security without confrontation, every measurement stored in my mind like a blueprint, the the faint metallic tang of the gate latch under my fingers reminding me of the engineering I could apply, the small adjustments I could make to direct traffic and preserve privacy, each footstep deliberate, calculating angles, anticipating routes, imagining how vehicles might respond to obstacles, the distant call of a hawk slicing through. The stillness, echoing the focus sharpening in my chest, the rhythmic thump of my heartbeat syncing with the natural cadence of the ranch. I moved to the barn, the smell of sawdust and fresh cut wood filling my senses, the memory of hammering nails beside my grandfather as a boy giving me a quiet confidence, the weight of inherited knowledge anchoring me, every ridge, beam, and corner a reference point for potential defenses, the sun glinting off the metal roof, sparks of light dancing across the interior as I inspected the layout, mentally placing cameras, barriers, and bollards with precision, the subtle squeak of hinges marking each observation, a symphony of sensory input that mapped the ranch in intimate detail, allowing me to anticipate movements and plan responses, the faint rustle of wildlife in the background adding a layer of authenticity to the living environment, every sound, scent, and visual cue reinforcing my connection to the land, solidifying the determination that this property, these acres, and every inch of my heritage would remain firmly under my watch, unassailable through vigilance, ingenuity, and careful preparation. The sun climbed higher over the rolling hills of the ranch, casting long shadows across the pasture, the grass shimmering with the morning dew, each blade catching light like tiny emeralds, and I could hear the soft hum of bees moving from wildflowers to wildflowers, the distant rustle of a breeze threading through the oaks carrying the scent of fresh pine and earth, grounding me in the rhythm of the land I had inherited, the weight of responsibility pressing against my shoulders but sharpening my focus rather than overwhelming it, every detail of the terrain etched into memory, the slight dip where water pooled after rain, the gentle rise that funneled the wind in a particular way, the alignment of the fence posts marking the exact boundaries that my grandfather had set with painstaking care decades ago, and I walked along the driveway, eyes scanning for any irregularities, the gravel crunching beneath my boots like a metronome keeping time with my thoughts, the smell of sun-warmed metal from the gates mixing with the dry dust of the road, creating a sensory map that connected me to every corner of the property, the old barn doors creaking gently as the wind nudged them, the wooden beams inside lined with notches and scratches that told stories of years spent maintaining equipment and animals, the faint scent of hay lingering, as if reminding me of every lesson learned here, from measuring water levels to checking the strength of fences, every sound and smell a cue to remain vigilant, the distant croak of a frog and the rhythmic tapping of a woodpecker punctuating the quiet, reminding me that life on this ranch followed its own rules, independent yet intertwined with my own actions, and I paused at the corner of the pasture, feeling the texture of the soil and grass beneath my fingers, the small pebbles pressing against my palm, each one a reminder of the solidity of this land, the history embedded in every inch of it, the knowledge that any approach to infringe upon this space would be met with careful calculation, and as the morning warmth spread across my back, the ranch unfolding like a living map before me, I traced lines with my eyes where bollards and barriers could be placed, imagining how each vehicle would encounter them, considering angles and sight lines, the interplay of shadows stretching across paths and driveways, the way light caught the edges of gates and fences, turning them into both markers and shields, and I felt the quiet confidence of planning, of being fully attuned to every subtle detail that could be leveraged, the breeze carrying the faint smell of oil from the tractor shed mixing with the natural scents, the distant laughter of workers on a neighboring farm blending into the ambient sounds of morning, grounding me in reality, making every calculated move feel tangible, every measurement precise, every observation a piece of the puzzle. Each step a preparation for the moment when intelligence and planning would turn observation into a definitive, unassailable defense, securing every inch of the ranch with foresight, precision, and unwavering connection to the land that had been entrusted to me. The rumble of tires on gravel reached my ears before I could even see them, a soft but deliberate sound that made every hair on my arms stand on end, the familiar white SUVs appearing around the bend of the access road, engines humming like they were asserting authority over land that was not theirs. I felt the crisp morning air fill my lungs, carrying the smell of sun-baked soil and fresh-cut grass, grounding me in the reality of the ranch and the history embedded in every fence post, every gate, every stone marker placed by my grandfather decades ago, each one a silent testament to ownership and care, and I knew that my response would have to be precise, measured, and completely unavoidable, not reactive but strategic, every detail considered, every angle visualized, the light catching on the metal gates glinting like a warning signal as I traced their path from the barn to the farthest corner of the pasture, noting the likely route of the SUVs, the gentle dips and rises of the land, the shadows that would fall across the driveway and fence line, and I could feel the pulse of anticipation thrum through me, steady and focused, as I considered how to assert control over the only entrances to my property, without confrontation, the distant clatter of a wind chime swinging in a soft breeze providing a counterpoint to the mechanical hum, the smell of pine and earth mingling with the faint metallic tang of gate latches as I moved along the perimeter, my boots crunching on gravel, eyes scanning for anything out of place, every crease in the road, every loose stone memorized, mapping the landscape in 3 dimensions in my mind, ready for the moment when observation would become action, the slight rustle of leaves, the distant caw of a crow, the subtle vibration in the ground as one SUV neared, all converging into a heightened awareness that sharpened my focus, the warm sun on my back mixing with the cool wind, creating a perfect balance. And I knew that every move I made, every placement of steel bollards, every adjustment of gates, every measure of distance would have to be deliberate, calculated, and flawless, a choreography of defense that would protect my ranch while leaving no room for doubt about ownership and authority. The rhythmic sounds of the morning, gravel, wind, birds, distant machinery, melding into a cadence that synced with my heartbeat, each sensory cue reinforcing the plan forming in my mind, the awareness of history, of lineage, of responsibility grounding every decision, and I could feel the invisible map of the ranch, every fence, gate, and post, aligning in perfect precision, as I prepared to set the first elements of my defense in motion, knowing that the land itself and the careful planning behind it would speak louder than any confrontation ever could. A quiet but undeniable assertion of control and protection over everything I had inherited and worked to maintain. I tried reaching out to the local authorities first, dialing the familiar numbers with the ranch phone pressed to my ear, feeling the cool plastic against my fingertips, listening to the faint hum of the line and the faint static that always preceded a connection, waiting for someone who could intervene and yet knowing they would not act until proof was undeniable. The sound of gravel shifting under the SUVs outside blending with the faint creak of the barn doors in the morning breeze, the smell of hay and earth grounding me as I waited and planned, every second stretching into a careful meditation on timing and observation. The way sunlight struck the ridges of the hills revealing contours I had memorized for decades, the alignment of posts and gates offering clues about the angles of approach, every step measured as I circled the property, feeling the uneven earth under my boots, listening to the distant call of a hawk circling above, and the wind carrying the faint scent of pine and dust, the SUVs moving with quiet confidence, oblivious to the careful scrutiny I was applying to each movement, noting the distances between the tires and the fence lines, the slight depressions in the gravel showing where they had pressed too close, the metallic tang of gate hinges under my touch reminding me of the leverage I could employ, the subtle shift in the breeze as the morning heat rose, carrying with it the promise of a long day and opportunities to act, each observation reinforcing the plan forming in my mind, the mental map of the ranch expanding with each passing moment, calculating angles, distances, sight lines, and anticipating reactions, the quiet chirping of insects and the soft rustle of leaves threading through the oaks lending a natural rhythm to my awareness, the distant barn bell chiming softly, as if echoing the cadence of thought and preparation, every sense heightened and aligned with the contours of the land, the anticipation coiling like a spring in my chest as I visualized the steps to assert control over the entrances, the placement of steel bollards and the timing of locks, The interplay of light and shadow guiding decisions, every post, gate, and gravel edge memorized and incorporated into a strategy that would leave no room for error. The smell of warm earth and the faint scent of oil from tools in the shed mingling as I prepared to transform observation and planning into precise, unassailable action, confident that the ranch and its boundaries would finally reflect the authority and care that had been cultivated for generations. I spent the morning moving carefully through the ranch, each step deliberate, boots sinking slightly into the soft earth, the scent of damp soil and freshly cut grass filling my senses as I measured distances and angles, noting where sunlight would reflect off the metal bollards and create clear visibility from every vantage point. The gentle rustle of leaves and the distant chirping of birds forming a subtle soundtrack to the methodical work, the wooden fence posts worn smooth from decades of weathering guiding my eye along the boundaries, every gate hinge, latch, and corner studied with care, calculating the optimal placement to control access while maintaining the natural flow of the land. The sound of gravel shifting under my feet a steady reminder of the connection between action and consequence, each slight slope and rise memorized, so that any approaching vehicle would encounter the intended deterrent precisely. The morning warmth settling across the hills, bringing out the golden hues of dry grass and the deep green of oaks. The smell of hay lingering as I paused to inspect a corner where the SUVs had pressed too close before, noting every indentation and marking in the earth, mentally plotting the arrangement of bollards to reinforce boundaries without disturbing the environment. The faint metallic tang from tools and gates mingling with the earthy aroma, the quiet breeze carrying the faint scent of pine and wildflowers, grounding me as I adjusted measurements. And imagined the path of each vehicle as it approached, visualizing how it would respond, every detail internalized, the alignment of posts and the spacing of gates forming a mental map that I could navigate blindfolded, the rhythmic sound of wind through the trees and distant calls of wildlife providing a calm but alert backdrop, my hands brushing over each surface, feeling texture and stability, confirming that every placement would be precise, deliberate, and unnoticeable until necessary, the sunlight catching on metal surfaces and casting subtle reflections that guided my decisions, each step reinforcing the strategy, the awareness of inherited responsibility pressing against me, but sharpening focus rather than creating hesitation, the distant hills stretching in undulating waves, reminding me of the expanse I was protecting, every element of the ranch observed, measured, and accounted for, the gravel, the grass, the posts, the gates, all forming a network of cues and markers, the land itself becoming a collaborator in the careful choreography I had devised, and I could feel a quiet satisfaction build, the sense of readiness settling in as each bollard found its place, every observation, every calculation, and every adjustment converging into a precise, unassailable plan to secure the ranch and its boundaries, preserving history, heritage, and control, the wind carrying the faint scent of earth and metal together, signaling the completion of this stage and the readiness for the next move that would make the property unquestionably mine. The morning sun had fully climbed above the horizon, painting the rolling hills in a warm gold that reflected off every fence post, gate, and the polished tops of the steel bollards I had installed, the quiet hum of distant insects and the rustle of leaves forming a gentle symphony that contrasted sharply with the tension I felt earlier as vehicles approached, every detail now perfectly aligned with my plan. The gravel driveway stretching ahead with shadows cast by the newly positioned barriers, each one marking the precise boundary and channeling movement exactly as intended. I moved slowly along the perimeter, hand brushing over the cool metal of the bollards, feeling their weight, the solid click of the locking mechanisms echoing faintly in the air as a reminder of security and control, the sunlight catching the edges and casting subtle glints across the landscape, the gentle breeze carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and earth, grounding me in the moment, every sense alert to the environment, the slight dip where the road met the pasture memorized, every hill and contour mapped in my mind to anticipate any approach, and I could see how the barriers guided movement naturally, preventing any unintended access while maintaining the openness of the ranch. the distant call of a hawk circling overhead adding to the rhythm of the land. The old oak trees casting long shadows across the fields, their roots deep in the soil that had been worked and loved for generations. Each beam of light highlighting the precision of placement, the faint metallic smell of the bollards mixing with the earthy aroma, reinforcing the presence of careful preparation. I walked past the barn, noting the alignment of every post and gate, every measurement taken earlier proving accurate, and I felt a quiet confidence settle in, knowing that the ranch was protected without confrontation, the path controlled by planning and observation, the quiet satisfaction of strategy executed flawlessly, every turn of the key, every bolt secured, every reflective surface considered, the interplay of light, shadow, and angle forming an invisible barrier more effective than any words. I paused at the corner of the property, listening to the subtle sounds of movement in the distance, the shift of gravel under tires that no longer breached the boundary, the wind carrying faint scents of pine and soil, a constant reminder that the land itself had become an ally, guiding and enforcing the limits I had drawn, every decision, every placement converging into a complete assertion of control. The ranch now a harmonious blend of natural beauty and deliberate design, every inch accounted for, every approach anticipated, every detail executing the plan without a sound, leaving me standing with the satisfaction that the land was not only mine but respected, secure, and unassailable. The quiet triumph of preparation and intelligence settling over the property like the gentle warmth of morning sunlight. The SUVs approached the driveway again, their engines humming softly, but this time I noticed hesitation in their movement, the drivers sensing the subtle yet firm presence of the steel bollards that now defined every entrance, the sunlight glinting off the tops of the metal posts, casting long reflections across the gravel that marked the boundaries, the dust swirling gently as they slowed, each vehicle carefully navigating around the barriers that funneled them without aggressive confrontation. The ranch itself seemingly breathing a quiet sigh of relief, the scent of earth and freshly cut grass mingling with the faint metallic tang of the bollards, grounding me in the tangible proof of preparation and control. I stood at the edge of the main gate, eyes scanning the horizon, noting every shadow, every subtle movement, the rustle of leaves, the distant calls of birds, each sound reinforcing the reality of ownership and the precision of the barriers. The gravel crunching under my boots a steady rhythm as I moved along the perimeter, confirming that every approach was properly guided, the subtle dips and rises of the land, the alignment of the gates, the reflective angles of the metal, all conspiring to create an unbreachable boundary, the faint hum of wind turbines from a neighboring property blending with the natural sounds of the ranch, creating a calm yet alert atmosphere. I observed the drivers in the SUVs, their expressions shifting as they realized that every potential shortcut had been anticipated, the careful placement of bollards channeling movement exactly as planned, the sunlight catching the edges of the barriers and highlighting their presence without a single word spoken, the gentle breeze carrying the smell of pine and earth, the distant water trough glinting in the sun, cattle grazing quietly, undisturbed now, the ranch returning to its natural rhythm, the strategic planning, the hours of observation, and the precise installation of the bollards coming together in a seamless execution. I felt the quiet satisfaction of a plan executed perfectly, the landscape itself reinforcing authority and boundaries, each vehicle pausing, turning, and ultimately retreating. Without incident, the subtle click of the locks on the gates audible in the morning air, every sensory detail confirming that the ranch was secure, respected, and completely under control. The warmth of the sun on my back mingling with the cool morning air, the combined sense of earth, metal, and grass filling my senses, and I knew that the careful orchestration of observation, preparation, and action had achieved its purpose. The property, the legacy, and the work of generations standing firm, unchallenged, and undeniably mine, a testament to patience, intelligence, and foresight executed with precision and calm. The ranch settled into a calm rhythm as the morning light stretched across every hill and hollow, the shadows of trees elongating gently over the fields, the steel bollards standing silently but resolutely at each entrance, sunlight glinting off their polished tops, casting reflections across the gravel that marked the boundaries. The faint breeze carrying the earthy scent of soil mixed with the subtle metallic tang from the barriers, grounding me in the tangible proof of preparation and control. The distant sound of cattle moving quietly in the pasture blending with the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional call of birds, creating a natural symphony that underscored the peaceful assertion of authority. I walked along the perimeter, hand brushing against the cool metal of the bollards, feeling their weight and stability. Each lock and hinge a confirmation that access was fully controlled, the alignment and spacing of every post and barrier precise, every angle considered, every sightline calculated, the gravel under my boots crunching softly, a steady rhythm syncing with the pulse of the land itself. I paused at the highest point on the ranch, looking out over the rolling acres, the sunlight catching every contour, every ridge and dip, the faint glimmer of metal reflecting across the fields like a quiet signal of readiness. The air crisp with the scent of pine, hay, and fresh earth, reinforcing the connection between careful planning and the physical landscape. The distant creek reflecting the golden sunlight, water rippling over smooth stones, its soft sound adding to the ambient calm and marking the continuity of nature alongside human stewardship. I traced the line of fences, gates, and bollards with my eyes, noting the harmony between the land and the protective measures, every detail perfectly integrated to allow freedom of movement for livestock and myself, while denying intrusion to any unauthorized vehicle. The sun climbing higher, warmth settling across the fields, the ranch alive with subtle motion, each gust of wind, each bird call, and each shifting shadow reinforcing the sense of balance and control, the distant hills blending into the horizon with the light playing across their slopes, the landscape itself seeming to acknowledge the care, diligence, and intelligence applied to its management. I felt the quiet satisfaction of a legacy secured, a heritage respected, and every inch of the property fully under observation and protected, the careful orchestration of preparation, measurement, and execution complete, the ranch standing as a testament to thoughtful vigilance, deliberate action, and a harmony of natural beauty and human foresight. Every sensory detail from the rustle of leaves to the metallic gleam of bollards contributing to the undeniable sense that the land, my inheritance, and the work of generations would remain secure, respected, and unchallenged, a lasting assertion of ownership and control that required no confrontation. Only the quiet certainty of preparation, awareness, and smart, patient execution.